Well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar hosted by the Urantia Association's Education Committee. Today's session is presented by Gaétan Charland from Canada, and it's entitled The Luciferian Way of Thinking, the Revelation, and Us. During the meeting, please mute yourself if you are not speaking to avoid background noise distractions. And if you do wish to speak, please raise your virtual hand and unmute yourself. Please only use the chat box for webinar-related questions. Using headphones can improve our sound quality and reduce echo background noise when we're speaking. We ask that you do not type when your microphone is unmuted. And this session is recorded for future study purpose use, and the video will be made available to the public on the Urantia Association's YouTube channel. Also, we are broadcasting this session live via Facebook. So if you don't wish to be seen on this broadcast or the video recording, please turn off your camera. We appreciate your cooperation. Thank you and merci. Our presenter today, Gaétan, has been a reader and student of the Urantia Book since 1979. He began attending study groups in 1987, and he started 2 groups in 1999. Gaétan was president of Urantia Association International from 2003 to 2013, after serving terms as local and national associations president for years. He now serves as associate trustee for the Urantia Foundation and is also a member of the Urantia Association International Governance Committee. Gaétan has a strong interest in study groups and any courses promoting teachers of the Urantia Book. He believes that study groups are the place where we can learn how to integrate the teachings of the Urantia Book and become in our own ways teachers ourselves. Thank you so much, Gaétan, and welcome everyone. We really appreciate you facilitating this topic for us today.
Thank you, Sherry, and thank you also, Jenny, and thank you, all of you that are here today. It seems like Lucifer is attracting a lot of attention, but before we go on with this presentation, I would like for us to have a short prayer. Well, short depending on how we see short. It's a prayer that a group of my brother from Africa, my wife and I are doing every day for the Urantia movement. And it has to do also a little bit with this presentation. So here's that prayer. Please unite us, be united in spirit when I read this prayer. In the plans of the Creator Son and in the dynamics of the Supreme, the two becoming one, the foundation and the brotherhood are the 2 essential pillars to coordinate the plans of the revelators on Urantia within the framework of this 5th epochal revelation with the personal revelation of our qualified adjusters. This, like the mission initially assigned by the Master to the Apostle on the one hand and to the body of evangelists on the other, and whose expected collaboration should allow the unification of the epochal revelation with the personal revelations. We pray to the Universal Father and to Michael of Nibadan that the Spirit of Truth, which is their joint creation, will inspire and guide the leader of the Foundation, the UAI, the Fellowship, and their affiliated structure to collaborate in a manner consistent with the goal of the Supreme. The forecast of Michael and the expectation of the truth-hungry human soul as well as the adjuster, both in the Urantia movement and throughout the planet. We also pray to the Father that our initiative and plans for cooperation and unification will be in accordance with his will and Michael's plan for the well-being of the revelation and on our world. May God sustain all the goodwills invested in this effort, and in particular, the leaders of the Urantia movement, based on our prayer to this effect. Thank you, Father, to accept and answer our prayer. May your will be done. Amen. Now, some of you might wonder why I chose that title, The Luciferian Ways of Thinking, ways of thinking, whatever we call it, the revelation in us. Most of the time when we think about Lucifer, we think about the rebellion. And we think that some of us might think that since Michael came on earth and Lucifer, not educated, but taken away to the prison, and Caligasio was left here with his associate Delegatio, we might think that we're so far away from the rebellion that we're no more influenced by it. But I don't think that's the way we should think about it. Just a little bit of history about this, why I chose that subject. Many years ago, I attended a conference in Montreal given by a philosopher. It was explaining how educational system that we have in our country, in North America, in Europe, that the educational system was influenced by one philosophy, and that philosophy was the one of Aristotle, a philosopher that lived over 2,300 years ago. And his philosophy has been the cornerstone of mostly all educational system on this planet. And because of this, most of our thinking has been influenced by this. Now we have to think that if a philosophy that was created or evolved 2,300 years ago, now what about the Lucifer? His own philosophy that was taught to man for more than 200,000 years. How would that influence our ways of thinking? How would that influence our educational system, our politics, our religion, our family life, our media, everything around us, our philosophy, our science? Now, the problem we have sometimes, and even myself I have, is how would I think if there would not have been any rebellion? What would be my frame of mind? How would I think about liberty? How would I think about education? How would I think about politics? How would I think about my neighbors? So we can see when we start thinking like this that the Lucifer rebellion had a great influence on how we see things, how we act, how we decide. And that's generally around the world, how people are. And if we look at the world today, and all of you know what's happening in the world at this time, there are wars. The power of the world is slowly changing side. China is wanting to change the world order with Russia. And who says that this could not happen? So when I start thinking about all of this, I was thinking about how much are we influenced by this Lucifer way of thinking. And sometimes because we might think because we are Urantia Book reader, we're not influenced by this. We're being exempted from that or cured from that way of thinking. Now, this is a little bit of a context in which I make this presentation. So I'm going to share some slides with you about what it says about the Lucifer rebellion, just to put us in the context of this rebellion, what it did to us, and what did Lucifer taught us. So I'm going to share my screen. Just a minute. Okay. So just to say that at the end of this presentation, I will be sharing with you in the little space there was a discussion. I will share with you a document containing links, another document that you could download and read to give you a more in-depth insight about the Luciferian way of thinking about the rebellion itself. So let's go to the next slide. The goal of this presentation is to explore some of the consequences of the Lucifer ways of thinking, to realize the importance of the revelation to cure the world of the Lucifer influence, to find out who we are in relation to the revelation, to become active participant in changing the world. The consequence of the Lucifer ways of thinking. An idea is a powerful tool when planted in the right mind. It could be a lever for unity and progress, or a weapon to divide and confuse. This is my own way of thinking about Lucifer rebellion. The war in heaven started by Lucifer was a war of ideas, not a war of weapon like we know today. It was a war of ideas. There was a war in heavens. Michael's commander and his angel fought against the dragon, Lucifer, Satan, and the apostate princes. And the dragon and his rebellious angel fought but prevailed not. This war in heaven was not a physical battle. As such, a conflict might be conceived on Urantia. In the early days of the struggle of Lucifer held forth continuously in the planetary amphitheaters. Gabriel conducted an unceasing exposure of the rebel sophistry from his headquarters taken up near at hand. The various personalities present on the sphere who were in doubt as to their attitude would journey back and forth between these discussions until they arrive at the final decision. Such crises in the affairs of the universe demonstrate a tremendous influence of mind as a factor in spiritual choosing. Education, training, and experience are factor in most of the vital decision of all evolutionary mortal creature. I call Lucifer the master conspirator. The reality of the Universal Father, Lucifer charged that the Universal Father did not really exist, that physical gravity and space energy were inherent in the universe, and that the Father was a myth invented by the Paradise Son to enable them to maintain the rule of the universe in the Father's name. He denied that personality was a gift of the Universal Father. Most bitterly did he attack the right of the Ancient of Days, foreign potentates, to interfere in the affairs of the local system and universes. These rulers he denounced as tyrant and usurper. The Lucifer rebellion was a system-wide, 37 systems seceding planetary prince swung their world administration largely to the side of the arch-rebel. Now we can see that this conspirator was probably the first one we got to know in our own system, in our own universe, like we call it, in our own planet. And we can see that the denial of the Father as existing is probably the base, where we found atheism, where it started. And where people, the fact that they didn't exist and Lucifer proclaimed that, survival was automatic, probably was the start of this belief in reincarnation. Now, the sin of Lucifer was to assess self-assertion was the battle cry of the Lucifer rebellion. Assert yourself. Lucifer began his rebellion by publishing his manifesto, the so-called Declaration of Liberty. In it, he makes three basic charges. The Universal Father is not real. The administration of the local universe is unfair. And the ascension plan of mortal is a farce. Let's keep on. Of all the perplexing problem growing out of the Lucifer rebellion, none has occasioned more difficulty than the failure of a mature evolutionary mortal to distinguish between true and false liberty. Liberty is societal when divorced from material justice, intellectual fairness, social forbearance, moral duty, and spiritual value. Liberty is non-existent apart from cosmic reality, and all personality reality is proportional to its divinity relationship. The mighty messenger who authored paper 54 enumerated the difference by juxtaposing true and false liberty. Here's the first one. True liberty is the quest of the age and the reward of evolutionary progress. False liberty is the subtle deception of the error of time and the evil of space. Enduring liberty is predicated on the reality of justice, intelligence, maturity, fraternity, and equity. An ideology that rejects waiting and learning is a product of false liberty. It manifests itself in theft, taking from others what we have not earned, murder, refusing to wait for justice, bribery, gaining an opportunity that was otherwise unavailable, lying, creating a false reality for selfish objective. All of these are manifestations of license, and there are plenty more examples that you probably can identify. And especially today in politics, we can see that. We can also see in all the media that are available, the social media today. Unbridled self-will and unregulated self-expression equal unmitigated selfishness, the acme of ungodliness. Liberty without the associated and ever-increasing conquest of self is a figment of egoistic mortal imagination. Self-motivated liberty is a conceptual illusion, a cruel deception. License masquerading in the garment of liberty is the forerunner of abject bondage. Slavery. True liberty is the associate of genuine self-respect. False liberty is the consort of self-admiration. True liberty is the fruit of self-control. False liberty, the assumption of self-assertion. Self-control leads to altruistic service. Self-admiration tends toward the exploitation of others for the selfish aggrandizement of such a mistaken individual as is willing to sacrifice righteous attainment for the sake of possessing unjust power over his fellow being. The spiritual insight and moral steadfastness which enabled Van to maintain such an unshakable attitude of loyalty to the universal government was the product of clear thinking, wise reasoning, logical judgment, sincere motivation, unselfish purpose, intelligent loyalty, experiential memory, disciplined character, and the unquestioned dedication of his personality to doing of the will of the Father in paradise. Evolutionary man finds it difficult fully to comprehend the significance and to grasp the meaning of evil, error, sin, and iniquity. Man is slow to perceive that contrastive perfection and imperfection produce potential evil, that conflicting truth and falsehood create confusing error, that the divine endowment of free will choice eventuates in the divergent realm of sin and righteousness, that the persistent pursuit of divinity leads to the kingdom of God as contracted with this continuous rejection, which lead to the man of iniquity. Now, if we look at this and look back to what happened to us, let's look at Gaétan and Eve. We remember that story. That started the division between men and women. Since then, women have been regarded as morally and spiritually inferior to men in most religions of the world. And this morning I was reading an article on the newspaper that talked about religion. And they were, saying the same thing that I'm saying here. For hundreds and thousands of years, religion put women on a different, an inferior role in life. Like you look at Catholic religion, whether you look at the Muslim religion, whether you look at the Jewish religion, women always have a second role, and sometimes not a very enviable role. Gaétan used human weakness to separate us, to create confusion and disharmony. What are some of those weaknesses? Pride, envy, jealousy, egotism, impatience, intolerance, greed, and many more weaknesses we could add to this list. And this is how Gaétan still do his nefarious ways. And to finish, and the Ancient of Days refused to annihilate any being until all moral values and all spiritual reality are extinct, both in evildoers and in all related supporters and possible sympathizers. As long as they are sympathizers to the ideas of Lucifer, Gaétan will stay on this world and keep doing what he does best, divide and confuse. So we have to make sure that everything we say or do does not confuse or divide. And what better way to do this but by sincerely doing our best to do the will of our Father. The great hope of Urantia lies in the possibility of a new revelation of Jesus with a new and enlarged presentation of his saving message, which would spiritually unite in loving service the numerous family of his present-day professed follower. Now I'm going to terminate this. Like, what about us as readers of Urantia Book and members of different Urantia organizations? Do we believe our thinking and reasoning are free of any of the influence of the Lucifer way of thinking? Let us explore those questions. And I'm going to stop my sharing, and I'm going to come back to it a little bit later for the second part of this presentation. Now, what I want to bring about is that the way we see the world at this time, and if any of you is very current in the affair of the world at this time, we know that things are changing. We know there's a lot of things happening in the world that are attacking religion. Communism is on the rise. And if we let, I don't know if any of you remember this, but when the Revelator gave us the Urantia Book, they said in one of the communication, now we have another fight to fight. We have to fight to make sure that communism doesn't, win over the world, because they said that communism was the greatest threat to Jesus' teaching. And it's still on the rise. We still have China, is a communist country, North Korea, which is a communist country, Cuba is a communist country, and Russia is a communist country. And they're both, Russia and China are both trying to get, the world order to change. And we see that at this time, democracy is being attacked, not only from the outside, but from the inside, not only in the US, but in Canada and Europe also. So there's a fight going on, an ideological struggle. But for us, Urantia Book reader, we might say that, well, we're free from that. We have this book, we're spiritual, we're all this. We might think, that we're completely free of that. But let's look back a little bit of the history. Some of you might know of that history. There's an article that was written by Dr. James Perry a few years ago. Some of you might know him as Dr. James Perry. I don't know him personally, but I read some of his article. He said, true problem solving requires three-dimensional thinking for truth-based understanding, the correlation between the past, present, and future, origin, history, and destiny. We need to understand those two things. Now, let me go back to a little bit of history. A few years ago, some of you might remember, well, not remember as being there, but you might have read of it. During the time of the forum, there was a guy that came in. His name was Sherman. You probably have all heard of him, the Sherman. It was called the Sherman Rebellion. And this man came to be a member of the forum. And during his time at the forum, he tried to divide the forum members, trying to get the forum members, well, he was saying to them, you know, why should Sadler be the one only controlling the revelation? You should have a say in it. So he tried to, you know, to get a little bit of the members there to rebel against the authority of Sadler's. And then finally, Sadler's knew about this and they kicked Sherman out. And apparently when they did kick him out, when Sadler asked him to leave, he didn't want to leave. So some of the members of the forum told him if he didn't leave, they would make sure he would leave. Whatever, they would probably kick him out with a good kick in the ass. So finally, Sherman left. And some of us might think that was the end of it. But that was not exactly the end of it. That started the fight for the control of the book in some minds. Many years later, some of you might not know about this, but Sherman traveled to France, met with Jacques Weiss, who was the first, in fact, translator of the Urantia Book. In fact, the French was the first translation ever made of the Urantia Book. And after Jacques Weiss met Sherman, things start happening differently with Jacques Weiss. He changed the way the contract was written between him and the foundation. So apparently the contract was to publish 5,000 books. Weiss decided to publish 10,000 books. The book had to be in one book. Weiss divided the book in 3 books. The books had to bear the same name as the original, the Urantia Book, Le Livre d'Urantia. Weiss changed the name of the book. He called him the Cosmogonie of Urantia. He was not supposed to put anything in the book, you know, any reference to the Bible or whatever. And Weiss did put some reference to the Bible in the book. He even put his name on the book. And when the foundation learned about that, well, it was, you know, like pandemonium, you know, like, what are we going to do? Now, you have to imagine that those people there at the foundation didn't know much about, you know, copyrights and lease translation and the copyright of translation. So they decided to hire a lawyer and look into the prospect of what can we do with that. So this battle lasted for many years. Weiss wanted to have the right of the copyright in French. And he was exploiting the laws of France to gain the copyright. Like in France, apparently, if you make different things with the original book, like he split it in 3, changed the title of the book, he would gain the copyright of his own translation. So after many years of working that and being in a court battle, finally they resolved the issue and Weiss gave back the copyright to the foundation. And then the book was again published. So for the French people, the book was not published for many years. And in Quebec, many people got the book through photocopies of the book. Very huge pile of papers that were selling for $100. Now, all of this probably caused a lot of confusion at the foundation to how to go about doing other translation. And that has probably retarded the work to do other translation, the fact that they were caught up in one of the first translation. And this is how a little bit Caligation works. You know, we have to imagine that if Caligation and Lucifer were interfering with the 4th revelation, even the 2nd revelation, then they might be interfering with the 5th revelation. So they will find all kinds of way, and Gaétan will find all kinds of way to create confusion and division among us. Not to say that we're a listener of Gaétan, I'm not saying that. But he has his ways, and we don't know how he can influence us. Look at how he influenced Eve. Of course, he met with Eve, and then he met with Gaétan, and he used someone else to influence Eve. So sometimes some people that we might come around might influence us in our own thinking. And Luciferian way of thinking is about liberty. Liberty to do what we want to do. And thinking that what we want to do is better than the rest of the others. Thinking that we know better. And we might have done that in our own life, thinking, oh, I will do this because I know better than you. And each one of us might be guilty of that, might be guilty at one time in our life of doing things our own way and not respecting the ways of the others, infringing on their own liberty because we thought we were right. And that's how it works, liberty, false liberty. Asserting our own self because we think we're better than the others. And many, many people do that today. And even us in our own ways of doing. So if you imagine that we've been raised in a family where they've been influenced by the education they receive, the religion they have, the media they listen to, or they read, the politics they follow, and their grandparents the same thing, we know that it's very hard to change the mindset of a generation to another. Look at our own generation, how hard it is to instill in our own children what we believe is right, because they are influenced by the media, they are influenced by their own mind, by their friends, by all kinds of people around us. And we are the same. We are influenced by our culture, by our own education, by what we read, by what we listen to, by what we watch, by the politics, by the politicians, by a lot of things that happen. This is why Jesus always said, you will see them by their fruits. You will judge them by their fruits. So we have to be aware of that when we look at what people say, we have to take into account, is it good? Is it true? Is it beautiful? Does it contain those true value in their expression? Now, we might think that we're exempt also of the Lucifer way of thinking. Now, one day I was having a discussion with Mo Siegel, who is now president of the foundation, and we were discussing about the origin of the split that happened in the Urantia movement. And we're thinking, why is it, how did it happen? It didn't happen with just 2 or 3 individuals. It's something that started to happen a long time before the split. A lot of people were involved in that. And Mo told me, he says, he asked me a question. He said, who do you think pulled the trigger the first? And he was referring to maybe people a long time ago, even during the forum. So idea, remember what I said about idea. Idea is a powerful tool if it's used to unite, elevate, and educate people. But it also can be a weapon to divide and confuse. And one day, I don't know if, probably some of you were all people of some age. We were probably all members of the Brotherhood at one time. I was. And I remember when I heard the split, I live in Quebec, so I was far away from that conflict. But I remember receiving a letter, and when I received the letter, I was hurt. I was hurt in my soul, in my mind, my heart of what was happening. I could not believe it. I could not believe what was happening, because for me, the Urantia movement was something that I searched for all my life, a place where the brotherhood would be established, where love between human beings would be real, a place where people would love to see the world a better place to live. And my dream, my vision of seeing that world was demolished by just one letter, by decision of people to split. I'm not putting the blame on anyone, because there probably was blame on all the sides. The blame on all of us that were there making decision, all those that put those decisions to action. And I've heard many stories of the split, some conflicting, some saying one side, some saying, but the thing is, after all of this, I understood that the split became real because some people thought their way of thinking was better than the other. They didn't listen to the other. They wanted to assert their own self in the decision, whether they'd be on the side of the foundation or the brotherhood at the time. They didn't look at the consequence of what would happen. And if we look today at the movement, the Urantia movement, I don't know if all of you have been traveling around the world to see what's happening with the Urantia movement. It's still growing, but it's growing with a lot of difficulties. It has problems because we are competing with two organizations are competing for membership. Now, I'm going to read you something because one day I was talking to someone about, the division and why there are two associations. And just a second. I'll find, okay, this is what the Urantia Book says about competition, because that person was telling me, well, competition, it's a good thing, because when we compete, we become better. Yeah, I say, yeah, that could be true in the business area, but what about a fraternal organization? We're not a business. Now, I went back to the Urantia Book, because this is what we have to do as an organization, to take our way of thinking, our way of ruling ourselves, in the teaching of the Urantia Book. So this is what it says about competition. Throughout the earlier ages of any world, competition is essential to progressive civilization. As the evolution of man progresses, cooperation becomes increasingly effective. In advanced civilization, cooperation is characterized by the survival of the biologically fit, but later civilizations are the better promoted by intelligent cooperation, understanding fraternity, and spiritual brotherhood. Spiritual brotherhood. Here we are. We're supposed to be a spiritual brotherhood. And here we are, we compete. We compete for the same people. You know what happened when we compete for the same people? I've seen it time and again, because I've been traveling the world as president of UAI many years ago. And I've seen what division can cause. The lack of money, the lack of resource, but not only that, the worst of it is people talking against each other. People diminishing the role of the other, people diminishing the value of the other. I've seen that time and time again, and I got sick of it. And I don't know if you get sick of it, but I'm still sick of it sometimes. Because when we spend so much time to have the world to evolve, to be a better place, and when we see our efforts being jeopardized by some people that don't want to unite, it makes me crazy, But it not only it makes me go, mad at myself, makes me, what can I do to finally make people realize that as an organization, we need to be united in one front. And Jesus said one thing, you remember that famous saying of Jesus, a house divided within itself cannot stand. And then we see where the world is at this time. If we are divided within ourselves, well, this generation will pass without having made a significant advance in sharing the teaching of the Urantia Book across the world. we will have to wait for another generation or another organization, because, you know, organizations come and go. And this is what could happen to us. Lately, most eagles share with us a document that was published, I think it's a newspaper in the US. Some people now are using the Urantia Book for their, you know, in the US, there's this thing about racism. Apparently, some organization using the Urantia Book to make it right for them to say they're superior to Black people. And that's happening at this time. They use the Urantia Book, like the supremacist movement, use passages from the Urantia Book. So imagine that. So the Urantia Book is being used in the wrong way, and soon some people will be attacking the Urantia Book. Now, who are we as ambassadors of this revelation? Are we united in our spiritual effort to share the teaching of the book, or are we divided within our own self? This is a reflection. This is a thinking that we must have. This is an exchange we must have with each other. We must talk more about unity. We must talk to our leaders. We need unity in this movement. What if we could reclaim our original name, maiden name, which was the Urantia Brotherhood? What was, you know, I'm pretty sure the foundation would agree to that. You know, if two organizations would come together finally, that would give us back our name. And then we could make great progress, because we would use all our resources. We always, you know, we're trying to find people to do different jobs in the organization, because as we are expanding, we need more resources. And we're lacking resources, because resources sometimes are using to compete, not to progress. So go back and talk to your leader and say, hey, what about unity? We want unity. Now, you know, unity is spiritual, not to be uniformity, but unity. We can cooperate, but as long as there's two organizations, we will always compete. And when we compete in the spiritual arena, it's not good at all. There should not be competition with two fraternity, two brotherhood, you know, two group of people that claims to have the truth. We'll become like those Christian religion that are divided. We'll start to say ours is better than the other. We already say that. I've seen it on the side of UAI. I've seen it on the side of the fellowship. People, oh, we're better. We're better. We're not better. We're the same. We have to understand that. And you know what? Kelly Garcia during that time is clapping his hand. He's really happy, because what he wants to do is make sure that revelation doesn't succeed. Because the longer it doesn't succeed, the longer he stays here on this planet making his crazy things. But sometimes we think he has no power. Forget that. They don't say he doesn't have no power. He has no power to invade the mind. They did not say he doesn't have power to influence people. And influencing people, he does. So make sure you're not being influenced by any conflicting ideas that tells you, oh, you know, competition is good. We can do what we want, because this is what happened, you know, when we split. Oh, we can do this. We cannot do this if we're with the other. But we have to find a common ground. So it's an appeal to you, all of you that are here. Now, once this presentation is over, what will you get from it? Are you going to go back and say, well, that was not bad, or it was good, or it was bad, whatever, and forget about it? Or are you going to do something with it? But that's only the beginning of it. Later on, we're going to have a little time to exchange ideas, but I want to keep on going, because there's a cure for that. There's a cure for the Luciferian way of thinking. Of course, we could discuss many things. I talked with a man in France lately, a few months ago. We talked about the Luciferian way of thinking. And he was telling me that he found words in the French language that create division that are from the Luciferian way of thinking. And he found many such words in the language. And we have words like this in every languages that are taken from this idea of self-liberty. But it's so ingrained within ourselves that we cannot make the difference of it. How can we be different if we don't know what different is? And how did that happen? How can we make that difference? But the Urantia book was given to us to do that. So let's move on to my next slide. The revelation as a cure for the Luciferian way of thinking. The fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, the gospel of the kingdom, is the fact of the fatherhood of God and coupled with the resultant truth of the sonship, brotherhood of man. The persistent preaching of this gospel of the kingdom will someday bring to all nations a new and unbelievable liberation, intellectual freedom, and religious liberty. This is certainly the most powerful truth proclaimed by Jesus, associated with the other truth that a part of God lives within us, the kingdom of God is within us. Do we truly realize the spiritual power of those truths when they are associated in the mind of man with the influence of the spirit of truth and the thought adjuster? You know, sometimes when we read Urantia book, we're trying to find ways to, what can we share? You know, what can we say to other people that will elevate their mind, that will give, bring light to them? We forget that the simple truth of the sonship with God and the brotherhood and the fact that God lives within ourselves is so powerful when it's associated with the spirit of truth, that when it is received in respectful ways, it's transforming the other individual. But first, we need to be transformed by that truth. The ultimate goal of human progress is the reverent recognition of the fatherhood of God and the loving materialization of the brotherhood of man. Only when God the Father becomes supreme will men become religious brothers and live together in religious peace on earth. We are indeed in loyal subject, but far transcending the fact is the transforming truth that we are His son. Do we really realize what that means to be the son of God, in our life? That's so profoundly true that sometimes we take it for granted. Just a second. And thus did the doctrines of the fatherhood of God makes imperative the practice of the brotherhood of man. The worship of God and the service of man became the sum and the substance of his religion. Religion is valid only when it reveals the fatherhood of God and enhances the brotherhood of man. The ultimate goal of society's most advanced achievement can never hope to transcend Jesus' brotherhood of man based on the recognition of the fatherhood of God. The ideal of all social attainment can be realized only in the coming of this divine kingdom. The people of another age will better understand the gospel of the kingdom. This is us now they're talking about, when it is presented in terms of expressive the family relationship. When men understand religion as the teaching of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, sonship with God. And that's the second part. I'm going to come back right after we discuss a little bit about the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. I'm not an expert in the Urantia book. I'm not a scholar in the Urantia book. There are people better in the community with probably that quality. I'm not an expert at all. I'm not an expert on the Lucifer rebellion either. Because when I started reading the book, I was not even interested in the life and teaching of Jesus. I was most interested in Adam and Eve and the Lucifer rebellion. I wanted to know why the world was upside down like it was. Later on, though, when I found out that what I was trying to share with people didn't make a good impression, people would probably reject me. I tried to give the books to many people, it didn't work. And I started asking myself, what about me? When they see me, what do they see? So when we share something, the messenger has to be the expression of this message. If we are not the expression in our life of the message, we're just hypocrites. We are empty vessel. That's what Jesus said. So we need to take that truth. We don't need to share the whole book. I mean, we need, as us reader, and I'll come back later about this, what makes us different than the rest of the world, us reader of the Urantia Book, in the last part of my presentation. But this part, about the teaching of Jesus, he taught many things. But when we compound everything that he said, what is the most significant truth that he proclaimed? That God is our Father, and that we are his son, and that God lives within us. That's enough to transform the world. And he knew, after he left, that the Spirit would come to live in our mind. And by this act, he knew that every human being would be inhabited by the thought adjusters. Two powerful influence associated with the Holy Spirit. He knew that those influences would make that truth so powerful in transforming us that he didn't need to say more. Of course, he taught a lot more. But basically, that's a truth that's so easy to understand. It's so easy to say, to communicate, as long as we live it. One of the problems we've had, I believe, and I have this problem myself, so I believe if I have it, if I still have it, there are other people, you are having the same problem. And that problem is to live those truths day by day, to transform ourselves. It's something difficult to do. One day when I remember before I read the Urantia Book, I was meditating, why is it so hard to become good? Why is it so easy to do the wrong thing? I didn't know better, but I was trying to get better. And even today, we know that it's hard to be a good human being when we see the world around us, how it is. We need every day to reassert our will to do the Father's will. But we need good foundation to do that. We need to be reshaped inside, renew in our own spirit. And this is what the Spirit of Truth does, by making us true sons of God. So if we would go around and start learning how to share that truth, sonship with God, brotherhood of man, God lives within ourselves. There are many schools out there that give us courses on the Urantia Book. There are study groups where we can share ways of doing that. And I found two schools that are mostly based on practical ways, on practice. Not to say that the other schools are not good. Each school is different in its way of teaching, and each school give us different perspective on the teaching. There's UBIS in different language. There's UUI. I took a marvelous course in UI given by Marvin Gawain, which was a family of God, which I invite you all to take. It was an eye-opening for me. Very good course. It should be translated in all languages. That's one of the problems we have. Our school are only available in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 languages, and some of them only in 1 language. And then there's a school of ambassadors. that was made by the group of what they call Christ Experiment, that have created a course to bring Christian to the revelation, but to show us how to do it based on how Jesus did it. Simple ways, very simple ways, but it takes time and practice. Of course, we take course one after the other. If we take course, if we learn things, we don't give it back, what happened? We lose it. That's the problem with us sometimes. We read, we study, and we're not in service-oriented activity. We don't put in practice what we read. I know, I've done that. Sometimes we're so focused on our own community, we forget that what needs to be changed is not only us, it's outside. We need to communicate those truths around us. And the school ambassador has done that. If you live in a Christian community where you participate in the church, what better way to learn that course and know how to do that, how to bring those Christians to the Urantia Book. Hey, imagine there's 2 billion Christians in the world. Imagine what an army that is, if all of those, if only 1 or 2 or 3 million of those would decide to go forth and proclaim that truth, the Father of the God and Brother of the Man, and change themselves. Imagine what an impact it would have. We need to grow in number to share that truth. But we can share other truths from the Urantia Book. I'm not saying that we should not share other things. I'll come back to that later. So let's go on to the next part of this presentation. Now, I took that from the publication mandate. Whoops, sorry about that. I'm going to go back. The book is being to those who are ready for it long before the day of its worldwide mission. You ever thought about that? I don't know if you believe in the publication mandate. I do. And I think it was a very important document that was given to us by the revelator when the revelation came to be. And a lot of people tried to discredit it. But when you read it, you see there are a lot of logical things, good things in it, consistent, and it's not dogmatic in its way. It was given only for leaders of the movement. Now, what makes us different from the rest of the world? What makes us really different? That's one question I'll come back to. But the publication of the book has not been postponed to that possibly, we say possibly, somewhat remote date. An early publication of the book has been provided so that it may be in the end for the training of leaders and teachers. That's what it says. Thousands of study groups must be brought into existence, and the book must be translated into many tongues. Thus will the book be in readiness when the battle for man's liberty is finally won and the world is once more made safe for the religion of Jesus and the freedom of mankind. The world needs to see Jesus living again on earth in the experience of spirit-born mortals who effectively reveal the Master to all men. And that is the great challenge that we have. Now, just before I was talking about schools, different schools, I forgot to mention the four. In fact, there's not 4 schools, there's 5 schools at this time. In the French community, we're kind of privileged. We now have 4 schools in French. The only one that's not in French is UUI. We have a new school that came online not long ago. It's a school of Sagesse Divine Progressive from our brother in Africa. They give the seminar, what they call Sagesse Divine Progressive Seminar, which are courses that were based on Musa's teaching, that when he passed away, his student took over and they built a website and they are giving course to many, many people. And they brought many, many people that are Muslims and other people to the Urantia Book as a reader, but not exactly always to the Urantia Book, but to liberate them spiritually, to tell them that they're sons of God and they have all those spiritual influence within them. And they have those serious seminars. At this time, they have 4 or 5 teachers, and they're teaching actually on a regular basis to more than 50 people every week. And the course are available in French, and they maybe soon they should be available also in English. And there's also a new school that happened in Quebec. It's called the Gallup School, which they teach about the different parts of the Urantia Book in French only, though. But that's another school for us, French. So we're privileged as being French. So I invite you to learn French if you want. It'll be easier to translate everything. So let's go back to who we are. What makes us different, us Urantia Book readers, as a community? Who are we? I mean, probably, I hope everyone here is found the book by themselves, or they're really Urantia Book reader. They're not outside the community. But let's talk about us as Urantia Book readers. Why are we so different? What makes us different? I'd say we're not special. Now, I'm not saying we're reservists, because some people might think they are I've seen some people, they thought they were reservists. I'm not saying myself, I don't believe at all I'm a reservist. I would not be effective a reservist, I don't think so. But what makes us special? What makes us different? Not special, but different. In every generation, when we look at, remember the Jewish people, they had prophets. Many, many prophets, not as many as we think, but each civilization, if we read Urantia Book, we found that there were great teachers in each civilization. People that would elevate the consciousness of their own people. Now, we're in the States now where the revelation was given to us. We know that God gave us personality, and there are many types of personality, many different personality, but there are also personality with different potential. Each one of us have a different potentials. But there's one potential that we have in common. We are truth seeker. That's what defines us. We are truth seeker. We've been looking for truth mostly all our life. We were not satisfied with what we were taught. Always questioning. Either it was the Bible, the Quran, or the whatever other books, will always question the truth contained in those writings. Why was that? We could see the inconsistency. We could see there was more, but we want to know more. For my part, I want to know the history of the world. I want to know why there was so much chaos in the world. Why the world was so upside down. I was also a believer of God. And I found it very sad when I wanted to talk about my father to other people. They would tell me, oh, this is not interesting. And I could not find why. Why are those people not interested in talking about God? So I found out by looking at all the different readers that we are, well, one thing we have in common, we are truth seeker. Truth is something that passionates us. We're passionate about truth. We like to share our own ways of thinking about truth, how we see truth. This is what brings us together. Now, God has provided us with that potential, with that characteristic of mind. And there's not many of us. The world was given, the book was given to those who are ready for it. We are ready. We were ready for it. In my family, we're 7 kids. I'm the only one that was looking for it. We had the same education, the same background, the same religion. Why is it that I was the only one? Or later on, my mother started reading, my sister. But why is it that in your family, you were probably the only one interested in the Urantia Book? What makes you so different than your brother and sister, than your neighbors? Because God has given you that personality that contains that potential. You remember the parable of the 10 talent? God is giving us talent. potential. Some of us have more than others. And those talents need to fructify. We need to use them. And for us, that talent is that we are seekers of truth. We are there to enlighten the world. We are those little lights that God has lighted around the world to give light to those people that are in darkness. We carry that light within us. We know how to shine it, but sometimes we shine it so bright that we blind people. We hurt them. We have to know how to share that light that's within us. There's a spirit of truth. There are 9 of them, but there's one that we don't talk very often about. Would you know what that one is? Temperance. Temperance. Do we know what that means? You know, temperance in French is used a lot for people that have drinking problem. Temperance is used to restrain yourself, not to drink too much. But why is it the fruit of the Spirit? Temperance is how we share truth also. Temperance has to do with respect. So we need to have restraint in how we share that truth. And the best way to share that truth is by embodying that truth, by being that truth. So we need to work on ourselves. We need to become better Urantia Book readers, better human beings. So we need, who's talking? Someone is talking. Would you be, okay. So we need to be what this thing says, the world needs to see Jesus living again on earth. In the experience of spirit-born mortals, we effectively reveal the master to all. Are we that? Do we ask ourselves, are we that person? When I'm talking to people about the Urantia Book, or talking about some of the teaching, are we really living what we're teaching? Are we the expression of that truth? Or are we just paroquet? Or just, reciting some quotes? Some people like to do that from the Bible or from the Urantia Book. What comes out of our mouth, is it the expression of the Spirit of truth? Do we really want to do the will of the Father in our life? Do we exactly know what it is to live the will of the Father? We have to question ourselves all the time, every day. What are the best means to achieve that? What are the best tools that were given to us to accomplish that? The Urantia Book gives us the answer to that. Paper 160, 161, Rodin paper. What did they say? Summarily, prayer, worship, meditation, and service. Service. Prayer, meditation, worship, service. Do all those activities in your life, and you will be transformed. But if you only pray, worship, and meditate, and you're not in service, you're not spending your talent. You're not making them fructify. You're just keeping all that resource to yourself. So you need to be in service to others outside of your community, not only in the community of Urantia Book reader. You need to be involved in your society in different ways, in hospital, in church, in social services, wherever you can be. And this is where you can share those truths. Now, some of us are better at science. Some of us are better at sociology. Some of us are better in philosophy. Some of us are better in education. Some of us are better with family things. Some of us are better in different ways. Each one of us is attracted to Urantia Book to different parts. Some of us like science. Some of us like philosophy. Some of us like religion, spirituality. What does that say? Of course, God did not make us all the same. He gave us different talent. To one he gave 10, to the other he gave 9, to the other he gave 7, to the other he gave 5, to the other he gave 3, to the other he gave 1. But each one of those talents are different. So each one of us can go back in our own society, in our own little group of people to which we go with. Like some of us might be interested in politics. Well, there's all kinds of things in the Urantia book about politics. You could take a little bit of what is there and have discussion with those people about what's good in politics, what should be in politics. Try to make their mind think about something different and let the Spirit of truth do its work. You might be interested in science. Well, get associated with scientists and have discussion about them, about what they do, and bring to them a new ideas, new light into what they do, and let the Spirit of truth do their work, do its work. You can be interested in philosophy. Well, get involved with philosophers and share your own view of philosophy. Have discussion, but don't talk about the Urantia book. Just talk about your own ways of seeing this according to your own understanding of the teaching. And let the Spirit of truth do its work. Let the thought adjuster do their work. You could be interested in family value. Get involved in family circles. And on and on and on and on. And this is how, if we become good sowers of truth. Remember the parable of the sowers? Well, are you a sowers of truth? Are you a good sowers of truth? Do you sow truth wherever you go? By smiling, by talking to people, by serving people, by talking to encourage people to have a better life? What are the kind of seeds you're sowing? When people look at you, what do they see? Are you the representation of what you see? This is all the question we need to ask ourselves. Each one of us here, we're 69 now. Each one of us can be a source in our own way. Each one of us. And to be a sower is being an educator, is to being a teacher. That's what a sower is. Some people say, oh, I'm not the teacher. I'm not a teacher. No, we are all teachers. We always teach something. So what is your best way of teaching? Now, I'm nearly finished. I know someone has his hand up. Bob has his hand up, and we have three-quarters an hour left in our discussion. There are many more things that I could say, but I'm pretty sure if I resume my old talk, be watchful of how you think. Be watchful of the word you use. Are they reflecting really the word of Jesus? One day I had a good talk with one of my friends, Sheila Kinilong. Maybe some of you know her. She wrote a book, Heaven is Not the Last Stop. She wrote another book also. She used to be a head of the education committee for UAI. And during a trip in South America, we were having a talk about Jesus and the Lucifer, well, in some kind of talking about Lucifer, how he screwed up our world. And she was saying, you know what? The Urantia book is the mind frame, the exact mind frame that Jesus had while he was on earth. I said, wow, I never thought about that. The Urantia book is the mindset, the mind frame that Jesus had while he was on earth. Think about that. So everything is a Urantia book. There's giving us this mindset, the words, the thought, the philosophy, how to think and how to express those thoughts. And how to do that, it was all in the life and teaching of Jesus, how he lived his life. And if we can understand that pretty well, if we read the life and teaching of Jesus, according to what else was in the book, everything else was in the book, then we understand exactly how he was thinking. And his apostle always questioned him, how is it that he thinks like that? Well, he had this mindset, devoid of any Luciferian way of thinking. His mind was clear, was pure. How did he achieve that when he was a human? Prayer, meditation, worship, and service. It's a miracle cure, if we can look at it that way. So start today. Engage yourself in transforming yourself. Engage yourselves in service to share with others. Be a good source. Everyone can do that. And lastly, go back to your leader and say, we're tired of being separated in two organizations. Let's make us one, like the Midway creature. United we stand. Because I tell you, if we don't stand together, what's coming ahead of us, it will destroy us if we're not united. If it's not destroying us, well, it will be quite a war against us. So be united. We need all our resource for what is coming. And it's coming. Whether you like it, you believe it or not, it's coming. The world is changing. In a few years' time, the world will not be the same. And this is what it says in the publication mandate. The future is not open to your mind. The struggle for liberty is not over. The struggle will last for 1,000 years. That's what this says in the Urantia Book. So be us prepared. Go back to your leader and say, we want unity. We're tired of being deunited, be separated, spending our money for competition. Let the foundation what it does best, and let us do what we do best. And what we do best is to share truth. That's what we do best. And Gaétan was very active, because if you talk about translation, you look in Korea, they have 3 or 4 translations. And you know what? They're not getting anywhere. They're always fighting to which one has the best translation. Have confidence in the means that were given to us. That's important. Have confidence in the foundation that was given by the Revelator. They're the one that set it up at the beginning. So if they did authorize it, it's because it's the institution that should take care of that. Now the Brotherhood should take care of getting that truth out in the world. That's our job. Not to publish, not to translate, to go out and share what it was given to us, to be the source of what was given to us. That's our work. So let's get on with it. Okay, I'm done, because I can go on like this. Thank you. So Bob wants to say something.
Well, you were talking before about being special, and if I encounter a group of strangers and want to introduce them to the Urantia Book, I usually lead with government on a neighboring planet. I'm kidding. I work within the context of churchianity. I know that Carol Forrester does also. And when you consider how much, in terms of column inches, the revelators devoted to the rehabilitation of the church and the revitalization of Christianity, I just view the church as serviceable. When you were talking about the truth seekers, I mean, I've been part of several adult Sunday school classes that are named precisely that. They call themselves the truth seekers within the church context. And as part of the pulpit supply for the United Methodist Church in Western North Carolina, my sermons generally are biblically based, but they're organized in accordance with what the Urantia papers teach. So I spend a lot of time in Clyde Bedell's Concordex, and I spend, a considerable amount of time pointing out the fact that, in the Bible, for example, it says that Jesus and the apostles went about preaching and teaching the gospel. And you go, wait a minute, because the gospel that I heard from the church is that, he died and he was resurrected, and, that our salvation comes from some sort of sacrificial atonement. So what was that gospel that Jesus was preaching? And that gets you into the idea of sharing the gospel of Jesus as opposed to sharing the gospel about Jesus. I see that, church work is something that's I've considered fruitful, and I believe as an institution, it's quite serviceable. That's about all I have to say, except I want to note I just came back from Montgomery, Alabama, and spent some time with people from Martin Luther King's church where he was preaching during the bus boycott. And I'm at the point now when I look at the behaviors of people that were, in my opinion, masquerading as Christians during those times of slavery and lynching and the segregation and right now the mass incarceration. I don't like some of the people that I associate very much, and I know that I have to do a considerable amount of soul searching to work through that. That's pretty much all I have to say at this point, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, at least you're in service in your own church. That's pretty good. I like to hear that. More of that. Thank you. Carol.
Thank you for your enthusiasm about getting people out of their chairs.
I hope they do.
But my comment is also about the Christian community, because I am also involved in the Christian community, and we all are ambassadors and have the potential to be ambassadors in things that we know well. And if someone does want to be an ambassador to the Christian community, I would very strongly recommend that they learn about it first. There's a lot of assumptions that I've witnessed in the Urantia community about what's going on in the Christian community, and there's a lot of ignorance about the Bible. And if you're going to be involved in the Christian community, there's a whole language to it, and you need to learn the Bible. You do not just read the Urantia book if you're going to do that. I'm with you. If you're in science, go to science communities. If you're in philosophy, go to philosophy. But don't go to the Christian community if you don't know what you're talking about, because it gives the Urantia book a really bad name. That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you, Carol. You're very right about that. Of course, we need to go in and know about the community in which we want to be involved in. If they read the Bible, we need to know about the Bible. That's what the Christ experiment did with the school ambassadors. They take Bible verse and they bring them to the Urantia book teaching, like they make a connection between the two and how to go about those paradox or those doctrine that they have in Christian religion, like the salvation doctrine, how to go about it and not to go about it. There's different things we need to learn, and nothing better than a Christian, someone that knows the Bible, how to do it. So this is why I invite anyone that wants to be involved in the Christian church and how to share the teaching of the Urantia book in the Christian church. At least, like you say, they should know the Bible. And then those ways how to bring those people to elevate. That's what they do. They elevate the mind of people to higher truth, like Jesus did. So thank you for sharing. Yes, Richard.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. By the way, you look like Captain Picard.
Do I? Well, it's just my because I got nowhere. Je peux parler français.
Okay. Anyway, sorry, I can't. My camera's not working. But I've been a Urantia book reader for many years, probably 5 decades or so, and I've been part of our society and done a lot of things. And recently, as I grow older, I'm decided that I want to really do something about the world situation based on many of the concepts in the Urantia book. And one of the concepts in the Urantia book is that the whole universe is alive. Okay, whole universe is alive. And, I'm sure you've heard of the Gaia theory that the Earth is alive. And I was thinking that if the Earth is alive, and we all are like cells of this planet, does this planet, if it is indeed a living being, as the Gaia theory posits, and as the Urantia book actually supports this, do we have a soul? Does the Earth have a soul? And as you know, in the Urantia book, it says that our soul is created when we make a moral decision, when we're probably about 4 or 5 years old. And so I was wondering, well, if the earth is a living being, and it can have a soul, but it has to make a moral decision. So I asked myself, has the world as a whole made a moral decision? As a whole now. And looking at history, I'm a big history buff, and I say, well, probably not, except for maybe the creation of the League of Nations and the United Nations. That's kind of close to the world making a decision as a whole, a moral decision, but it's not really there because the United Nations is not sovereign, and it really is very, it's powerless, basically. So I said, how can we get this together? How can we have the population of the earth? And by the way, I don't think of human beings as bugs living on a planet. I think that we are cells of a living planet. We are all one, the earth. The earth, the atmosphere, the birds, the bugs, the ocean, the wind, everything. We're all part of this. We're not separate from that. Okay, so we are the earth. We are not bugs living on the earth. We are actually the earth. Because, I'm the earth. I can say I'm a living being, okay? Am I something separate from the earth? No, I am part of the earth. I breathe in the air. When I die, everything in my material body goes back to the earth. So I am the earth, as are you. And we have all been recycled many, millions of times. So as a planet, how can we make this decision? Okay, to have a moral decision so that we can have a soul. So I envision this thing called the Earth Monitor Project. Now you can see my website. It's at earthmonitorproject.com. But what it is it's an elliptical project. Now the Urantia book says that if we look at the universe as a rationalistic, mechanical thing, we're half wrong, no matter how right we think we are. And same with the spiritual end. If we're totally concerned about the spiritual aspect, and we think that the universe is just spiritual, that's half wrong also. The Urantia book says that it is a elliptical universe. Now, in other words, we have to combine both the science, the rationality of science, plus the mystical and mythical aspects of spirituality. And this Earth Monitor project is just that. It uses science to create. This is very technological, so I'm not sure if you.
Let's make it simpler.
Okay, basically, it is a 360-degree monitor. Okay, and what it is, it's a biofeedback mechanism for the earth, so that whatever we do, whether it's spiritual, material, scientific, it will impact the whole planet, and we can actually see what we're doing to the planet so that we can change our behavior. Now this is very advanced. This is cutting edge stuff. I can't get enough people to get interested in this because it's so beyond the box. It's so out of the box for most people. But as Urantia book readers, I think we can do this. But this is way beyond just, Urantia book 101 now. This is really like getting into, the reality of the universe, the reality of how we, as human beings, and our beliefs in the Urantia book, how that impacts directly the real world. Yes, Urantia book readers, we tend to kind of get lost into this mystical, spiritual, religious idea, but the thing is, all this is real when we apply it directly to the planet. Okay, everything that is going on right now can be attributed to the influences we have, like you mentioned, the influences from Caligastia and Dalagastia. They're still working their evil on this planet right now as we speak. And we can see that in the news. Every time you see something in the news that goes with the Lucifer manifesto, especially those 3 tenets, you can say that Lucifer and Caligastia probably has something to do with this. Okay, and so this is very vital that the Urantia Book movement get out of this mystical idea and get directly into the real world. Okay, the real world. Now we're talking about all these celestial beings, quote unquote, who are, we think of them as angels. It's a mystical. There's a mystical idea about it, but it's not just mystical. It's real. These are actually, quote unquote, alien beings. Caligastia and Dalagastia, they are not of this earth. Okay, and the whole Lucifer rebellion was based on an experiment by the Constellation Fathers. Now, the Constellation Fathers and System Sovereign, Lucifer, who was a System Sovereign, they have complete free will to basically do what they want. They experiment. God does not need to experiment. He knows everything. He's omnipotent. He's omniscient. He doesn't need to experiment. So these people, like the Constellation Fathers and the System Sovereigns, they're of our time and space, okay? So they're of this evolutionary universe where they have to make mistakes in order to grow. So they messed up really big, okay? And even the Adam and Eve, people think they were given to us by God. No, it was a System Sovereign, Lucifer, who sent Adam and Eve to us. And so right from the beginning, Lucifer manipulated Adam and Eve, and after that, Lucifer was imprisoned. Okay, but then I go, why wasn't Caligastia and Dalagastia imprisoned? I'm sure the celestial police force or whatever, they have the means to do it. Why are Caligastia and Dalagastia still here?
Well, the answer is given because till they are sympathizers of their own thinking, of the way they think, of their philosophy, and of them,
yes,
he will stay on this planet with his associate. There's a paper that was done by Chuck Thurston, which I have included in the link provided. If you go to the discussion link there, at the bottom of your screen, I shared 3 documents. And one of them is a link to the Lucifer Rebellion. And one of them is the journal, UAI journal, dating back to 2012, where that article that was done by Chuck Thurston is in there. And it explains in all kinds of ways how long the rebellion, how long the education of the Lucifer Rebellion will take, and when will that rebel be taken out of our planet. So I invite you to read those papers. And in that journal, there are 3 articles, one on the Lucifer education, one on the written by Sheila Kinney Long about the religion of Jesus and how to bypass that Luciferian thinking. And another one, there's 3, the first 3 articles are good read in the same kind of thought of my presentation. And there's also in the link, in the pages where there are links to another document that was created by the Christ Experiment people, which is on their website. It's called the Ask website. And the document is there also on that link. It's a Dropbox link where you can have all those documents downloaded to your computer, and where you will have a lot of, in fact, it's 3 papers into one. It talks about the rebellion and the consequence of the rebellion, and the ideological struggle, what exactly it is. So I invite you to read those documents. Thank you very much, Richard, for your contribution. So there was someone else having their hands up or want to say something or ask a question?
Yeah, Eric here.
Who?
Eric.
Coulter,
Eric.
Coulter, did you have your hand up, Coulter?
I did. Eric, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just briefly, when you mentioned the idea of us having that common trait of being truth seekers, and the few in among so many. I'm curious, we were all drawn to the Urantia Book revelation, or the revelation was drawn to us. I'm wondering, Gaétan, what your thoughts are on the actual role of the thought adjuster in each of these individuals as truth seekers. and how that the urgings of the thought adjuster brought us all to the point where, through our willingness and our openness to it and our thoughts and decisions, we ultimately ended up with the revelation and find ourselves now here. Do you have any thoughts on the actual role that the thought adjuster may have had with each of us to get us there?
Of course I do. And I believe sometimes we misunderstand a little bit the role of the thought adjuster. That's my own belief anyway. We attribute a lot of things to the thought adjuster, while there are many spiritual influences to bring us along, like the Spirit of Truth, the Holy Spirit. And remember what they say about the Spirit of Truth. When in doubt, the Spirit will always say, this is the way. And how do we know that this is the truth when we find it? Well, what makes us look for that truth? We know that the thought adjuster adapts our mind to higher reality. That's what it does, thought adjuster. And it's not only adjusting the thought itself, it's adjusting the thinking process, how to accommodate new perspective, new ideas, how to accommodate the mind to consider higher truth, higher thing. Now, the Spirit of Truth and the Holy Spirit always work in harmony with the thought adjuster. They all work together. So it's very difficult for us to know at any one time, is it the thought adjuster? Is it the Spirit of Truth? Or is it the Holy Spirit? Because they all work together. And if they would not work together, it would not be efficient. Now, there's other influence there, angels. We have guardian angel, but there's also other kinds of angels that I want for us to discover those truths.
This is pretty serious.
There's
It's
someone.
gotta be.
Okay. And so those angels, I was reading this morning a passage on the angel that we have on earth, and they are specialized angel just to take care of those people who wants to socialize or to bring truth to others. And there's a group of higher angel, I think they call the angel, there's the angel of religion, the angel of progress, the angel of industry, the angel of health. There's a group there of 12 different angels. And some people could probably tell you more about this. I'm not an expert in this, but I know there's someone that created an organization where they explore those ideas of those group of angels and try to work in accordance with their influence and with their purpose. So I believe that the thought adjuster, yes, but it prepares our mind for the truth we might find. We also have the adjutant mind spirit that's at work within us, like the spirit of religion, the spirit of wisdom, and the spirit of worship. That's always elevating our mind to find God. So all those influences are working together to bring them to one direction. But now we have to understand another thing. They tell us that when we come to this world, we have a personality that God has how would I say, as predicted as I'm mixing the word from French and English, but as made that personality have a certain plan in the universe, as planned for each personality a different course, a different potential. And each one of us have a plan of ascension. And in this plan, they say that if we discover that plan early in our life, we become more effective in having a very successful life because we follow the Spirit. Not all of us find that plan, but some of us have. And I think probably us that are seekers of truth, and we're not satisfied till we find that truth. It's probably part of that plan that God has for each one of us. And that plan is also part of the Supreme. Sometimes we forget the influence of the Supreme in our life. Every time we make an experience, that spiritual experience, is a gift of the Supreme. And the Supreme give us back something in return. We're part of that Supreme God. Jesus, when he came on earth, that's what he accomplished. He accomplished supremacy. And for some of us, supremacy will only come very much later on in our own evolution. So there's all kinds of those influence. Which one of it? All of them. All of them, they want us to express our potential. We're like little prophets, like the old prophets of old. Some of them are better than others, but we're all little prophets. But how are we going to sow those seeds is depending how willing we are to do the will of God. And for me, this is why it's so important to understand those truths that we are sons of God. What does it mean for us to be true son of God? Mature son of God. We need to investigate in our mind, meditate on what does it mean exactly. What is it to live the brotherhood of men? When I look around, do I see people I don't know? I don't like that person, or I like that person. We are brother and sister, but how do you feel them? Do we try to see them as brother, or do we see ourselves as a brother to them instead of trying to see them as brother to us? Is them going towards them? We have the light. We should be going towards them, not them towards us. But if we become enlightened, if we live that truth, people will be attracted to us. People, what do they like? The fruit of the Spirit. When people manifest the truth of the Spirit, there's joy, there's faith, there's love, goodness, there's patience, there's meekness, there's tolerance, temperance, joy. Are we joyful, or are we always sad? Are we always angry, or are we smiling and luminous? You know, how we are is how people perceive us. What do they see when they see us? Did they see a grunchy old man or a grunchy old lady? Do they see someone that's always frustrated? Did they see someone negative or positive? Someone that always encouraged them to go forward? Or did they see someone that always, oh, the world is upside down, things are going bad, blah, blah, blah? Or do they see someone, no, there's hope in the world? What do they see? And this is who we are. We are those people that are the lights. And this is why in paper 140, remember, you are the light of the world, the salt of the earth. And the salt is the love we have for the other. If we don't have love for the other, who's going to give love? And it's with love that we can share that light. And love is always associated with wisdom and temperance. Only give so much light as not to blind the others. I blind people so many times in my life, because when we get the Urantia book, you know, we're so in love with the book. And some people I still meet, they're so in love with the book. They can talk without talking about the book. The book is their life. But it's not the book that's important. It's the message that it contains. How we live that message. And how we live it will be more of a teacher than the word we use. People are looking at us. And there's only one example of that I can give you. Is when I start reading the book. I tried to share the book to my whole family, to all my friends. And my family rejected it. They thought I was crazy. And so many my friends. And many years later, I read the book in 79. So between 79 and 81, I shared the book with a lot of people. And in 1999, that's a long time. After I started my study group, I met with my mother and my sister. And I told them I was starting a study group at my place. And they said, what kind of study group? A study group about the Urantia Book. And my mother said, wow, I'd love to go to your group. I said, what do you mean you'd love to go to my group? You're not even reading the Urantia Book. And my sister says, yes, we've been reading the Urantia Book for the last 2 years. Wow, why didn't you tell me? She said, we don't have to tell you everything. So I asked my mother, why did you start reading the book? I was not talking about the Urantia Book anymore to them. And then my mother says, we were watching you. And then when we saw the good that that book did to you, we decided to investigate what was in that book. You see how this? It's not what I told them, it's what I became. Not that I'm perfect, but I was a little bit better than I was when I showed them the book in 1979. And that for me was a lesson. The lesson was we need to become the message. If we're not the message, we're an empty vessel, we're hypocrites, we're dogmatics in our ways of doing things. But we need to keep on learning and learning and learning and practicing and be in service. Imagine if all the community of Urantia Book reader tomorrow would start being invested in activity outside of the movement and start learning how to share those truths, how to see those truths, day after day, day after day, day after day. You know another thing that I'm doing sometimes? I have a tablet, an iPad, and I read the newspaper on the iPad. And there's always underneath many articles, give your opinion. And I write, some of those articles are very appealing to me. So I write what I think based on the Urantia Book teaching. And sometimes they publish my articles. So little things, little comments that I made could be read by hundreds, thousands of people. And this is easy for any one of you to do. You could go in a newspaper and look for the reader's opinion and give your opinion on any subject, whether it's politics, whether it's abortion, whether it's liberty, whether it's family, whether it's education. Be active in your community. For the evil to win, it's for good men to do nothing. We need to understand those values that we have. We need to be the light. Sorry if I take long. Jimmer, we're listening to you. You're mute, Jimmer. You're mute. Jimmer, you're mute.
You're muted, Jimmer.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you very much. I am just delighted with this exposition, this marvelous presentation, Gaétan. Many ideas just are filled in the right place in my heart when you are talking. I would feel just totally in tune with everything was said here, and I have something to say, and this is coming from my very heart, very bottom of my heart. Actually, I am going to say it just looking for ideas, reactions, expressions, just to give a way of this urgency that I see we have at this time of history in the century 21st. You talked very clear about who we are, and I agree that we are very, very key people in this time of history because we know the revelation. You talked about what is the real gospel, and we don't have to read hundreds of books or go to college or to the seminary to understand what the kingdom of God is, but just a couple of sentences. The gospel is believe in your heart that God is the Father, is our Father. Therefore, we all together, which means all races, all people in the whole continents in this world are brothers and sisters. That's the simple gospel. You don't have to go farther than that. We have said a lot of great things, Gaétan, and that's what I am going to take the risk to say this. I typed a couple of ways to say it, and I'm going to read it for you, and I hope you help me just to say yes, this is possible or not, this is crazy. And I will be grateful with you, whatever you say, okay?
Okay.
What we can do at this time? We know who we are. Now, what we can do at this time? Is it the time mature to start opening the discussion in the whole world, Urantians in the full 5 continents, about the invisible church? I am thinking in the invisible church. If that time is mature, then we need to fool the earth with Jesus' vision of the invisible church. He had a vision for the invisible church. He called it in different ways: the invisible brotherhood, the brotherhood of believers, whatever you can think of that full meaning of the invisible church, compounded by unity, not uniformity. Is that time mature to start talking about that? I have the sense that starting that displaying of expressions, I belong to the invisible church, could be a renaissance of the living gospel of Jesus. Is the church of believers all of the world could possibly feel a challenge? It could be possible that Buddhists all over the world, that Jewish all over the world, that Muslims all over the world could feel united in some way if we start to saying we belong to the invisible church. My question is, if this century 21st we are living in, is the time mature to challenge us to go ahead with the idea of we are the invisible church, we belong to the living gospel of Jesus? And that is what I have in my heart, and I'd appreciate whatever comment you have about that.
Well, it's a beautiful vision, Jimmer. And in fact, the brotherhood, the spiritual brotherhood of men is that invisible church.
Mm-hmm.
And when we believe that we're true Son of God, we really become conscious of that reality within ourselves. Then we become conscious that we are brother and sister, because each one of us is a son of God. And then we belong to that invisible church, like you're saying. We are automatically included in that church because we all believe in the same thing. Yes, but it all depends how we go about to proclaim that message, to make sure that people, the way we say it, we bring it to them, is respectful of their appreciation of what we're trying to teach them or tell them. Some people might not understand what it means in invisible church. We have to introduce them first to the fact that they are son of God. And when they do understand that they're son of God, then they'll start seeing the other people around them as also children of God, and so they're brothers. I remember a few years ago, I had a phone call from a woman that was having a difficulty. In fact, she was dying from cancer. I had met her a few times, and she knew I was involved with the Urantia Book, not exactly the Urantia Book, but she knew I was involved with spirituality. So she wanted to talk to me, and she wanted to meet with me. So I said, okay, I'll go and meet you. And I found out that this woman was very troubled with her own life, and she was not sure she would survive. And she asked me, what do you think? And here I am in front of someone who doesn't know nothing, not much about God or the universe. And here I am with all that knowledge in my mind. And she asked me, what do I think? And I'm there looking at her. And I'm confounded. I don't know what to say to her. What can I say to this woman that in fact is asking for help? What's the only thing I could tell her that will not blind her? You know, I will not blind her by what I know. So I start praying. And I ask God, what can I tell that woman, God, that will bring peace and joy in her heart? And there's only one thing that came out of my mouth at that time. I look at her directly in her eyes and I say, do you know that God lives within you? And I pointed my finger at her heart and she looked at me and she started crying. And that's all I said. And I went to see her at the hospital before she died. And she passed away knowing that she was a daughter of God. That's all I needed to tell her, no more. I could tell her about the dimension world and everything, but that's too far away for her. So, Jimmer, the simple truth of that invisible church is that we are children of God. And when people understand that, they take that into their own heart. The spirit of truth, this is the way. Sometimes we forget too much that the spirit of truth is very active in the mind of someone that wants to know the truth. And when we tell that truth, after we pray to that spirit, the truth comes out through us. That's how God works. We are the ambassador of God. We are ambassador of this revelation, and we have responsibility. So thank you for sharing that, Jimmer. Thank you. I approve of you. Thank you. Yes, Coulter.
Hi, it's good to be here, everybody. Enjoyed your presentation, Gaétan. I just wanted to kind of put a word in. I've been reading the book since I was 21 years old, and I kind of came along when the massive controversy was happening, the lawsuits and whatnot, and it was very sad. Some people call it a default. They think the Urantia Book defaulted just like Adam and Eve defaulted not long after they got started. And then it was kind of funny. We found out that somebody forgot to actually renew the copyright of the book anyway. So it was all for naught. But over the years, you know, I love the book. I've carried the message of the book, handed many, many of them out. I don't think I've been very effective in doing that, but I can say this, it's helped me tremendously. It's helped me get to know the book. It's helped me get to know the Bible. It has had a tremendous influence on me, even though I've not been all that successful at quality placements of the book. I call it a quality placement, you know, where the seed was planted and somebody really, really got into it the same way that I'm into it. Because I'm, like you said, I'm one of those people that I'll talk about it to anyone who will listen, but I have to be careful because most people just don't want to hear about it. But what I wanted to say, I just wanted to share something, an idea that I've shared a long time in the Urantia Book community. It's been boohooed, and you know, we're like herding cats. Urantia Book readers tend to be ultra individualistic, and we know what a problem that was for Judas. Trying to get us together on anything is not easy. As you said, we're fractured. There's lots of different groups. I've been a member of a 12-step program for almost 40 years. And as people know, the 12-step programs are a spiritual solution to addiction, the horrible, incurable addiction. And in 1934 is when it all got started, sort of a similar date to the Urantia Book. 1955 is when they ratified the 12 traditions. Worldwide, 12-step programs are unified. Millions of people are a part of the 12-step programs under the concept of the 12 traditions. No rules, just traditions. And they follow them. They're unified. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of 12-step groups, and we've not had a division yet. And so I invite anybody who has any interest in that to simply Google 12 traditions, the 12 traditions of AA or the 12 traditions of NA, and just read those traditions. And you will see a framework for a fellowship of diverse people and how it is they've managed to stay together without screwing it up. So that's all. I just wanted to share that with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Walter. And you know, when I was thinking about unity, I was thinking, well, I know about the 12 step also. I was one time part of the A movement. And I know about the 12 rule also, and that I belong to another organization for people that suffer from anxiety. And we also have our rule based on the 12 tradition, and they work. And when I was thinking about unity, and I was thinking about the division between our two organizations, I mean, the fellowship and the UEI, and I said, how can we unite each other? And we need to look not at the difference, we need to look at this sameness of the two organizations. And I was thinking in my mind, you know, remember the United States at the beginning was a group of diverse countries. Each state was a kind of a small country. And they came together to create the United States. 52 states came together with different ideas, different perception, and yet they united under one banner. Look at Europe. They were at war within each other for hundreds of years, yet they united under one banner a few years ago as Europe, United Europe, you know, the space of Europe. So for us, we are a young movement, we only, 50 years old, 55 years old, no more. And we've been split only till 1989, or maybe earlier, but whatever the division is. If countries can find ways to unite together with all their differences, if Europe can find ways to unite itself with all the differences, why can't we find ways to unite ourselves if we're so spiritual? That's a challenge I want people to look at. And we need to unite. If we don't, we won't pass the test of time. This is in our courtyard. This is to us. We're the one that hold the key to that. We need to go back to those leaders and say, hey, we want unity. We're tired of being separated. We're all brother and sister. We need the resource of each other to grow. Divided, we will not stand. Make that clear. And anyone that oppose division, that oppose unity, put them away. Don't vote for them. You don't need division. We need unity. Because what's coming around in the later years, we need to be united. The movement, the brotherhood need to be united in order to face the challenge. If we're not, well, when we get to the next world, they'll ask us, we gave you everything, everything. You failed. Why did you fail? Because of your own agenda? But you have your own little vision? We need vision, and a long time vision, a vision that will bring us through this, what they call it, 100 years from now. We need that vision, a clear vision where we're going. But not only a vision for your organization, a spiritual vision of who we are. That's what we need. We need to go out as true sons of God, shine our light in such a way that will attract young people. Each organization have a problem attracting young people. Why do you think that is, that we're not growing? Of course, we're growing internationally because we're going in new countries. But is it growing in the US? Is it growing in Canada? Is it growing where there's division, like in Korea? No. It's growing where there's unity. We need unity. Just go back to the Lucifer rebellion. Study, you will see what makes us different. You will see what divides us. What divides us is the idea of a few that think, oh, I know better. It should be a vote to every reader. Every reader should be voting for that. Not only a few, everyone should be voting. And you will see that the majority of readers wants to be united under one banner. And then we could reclaim our original name, which is the brotherhood, and go out in the world as one, not as two. And soon there will be three, and there will be four. Look at the church how it is. What don't we understand in the house divided within the South cannot stand? What is it we don't understand in that? Is it just to the church? No, we are that invisible church that Jimmer said. We need to understand that. If you travel around the world like I did, you would see that that division is hurting us more than it's helping us. It's doing a lot of damage, more than you ever believe in. Okay, I'm done. Hey, that's the last thing I say, because we're already past the hour. So, Katarina. Hello, Katarina.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
I just wanted to say something about the AA and the framework and the organizations that can come together. They all had a common experiential thread. And I want to say experiential thread. To be an alcoholic and to want to get rid of the addiction, or to no more war ever after World War II. And unless we experientially, in beingness, know who we are, in our beingness, that we are with a living God within, and thus sons and daughters of God, we do not have this common thread. We only put a blue book out there, and we all think we understand it better than the next person. So our common thread is experientially knowing who we are and know that we have God within. That's it. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Katrina. Thank you very much. So I think this should conclude my presentation. What do you think, Janie? Or what do you think, Sherry? We're past the hours.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect note to end on, Katharina. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I want to thank you personally to have been there. Remember what I said. Be active in your community. Call your leader and say, we want to be part of that church, invisible church that Jimmy said about. We are the brotherhood in our heart, a spiritual brotherhood of men. And our mission is to bring that truth to the world. Let's not fail the revelation. Let's not fail the revelator. Let's not fail the adjusters, the spirit of truth, and all those angels that are trying hard to get us moving along. And I truly believe that once we unite, you won't believe how much we will progress. You won't believe it. Of course, there are challenges. There's always challenges. But as children of God, we can surmount those challenges. We can do good to this world. We have been given a lot of talents. Now, let's spend them wisely. So see you next time. Thank you very much for being there. Thank you for all of you, Eugenie, and to whoever, Sherry, who organized this, and all of you have been there.